Let's talk Utah Jazz basketball. I believe their season's over. They don't play for like a month. Well, Wednesday they play again. It just feels incredible that the Utah Jazz do not play until Wednesday.
Yeah.
When they host Toronto to kick off this long homestand here. How do you feel about the Jazz at this point? You know, we're damn near in February now. It's January 30th. You know, Wednesday's February 1st. Like, how are you guys feeling about the Utah Jazz? Because one of the things I thought was so interesting, I am not a fan of starting Olynyk and Walker Kessler together.
Uh-huh.
I'm not a fan of that. I would far more rather start Jared Vanderbilt and Walker Kessler together. That'd be my 4-5 combo. I'm not a guy that believes you should be starting Kelly. I don't value Kelly at that level. Now, I believe it's because they're trying to trade Kelly Olynyk and they have the opportunity to do that. I think that's why you continue to start him, because you don't want to hurt his value. But I think in the long term, the Utah Jazz have made the exact right decision here, making it clear. Will Hardy the other day said that Walker Kessler will be his starter at the 5 for the rest of the season, which is exactly the right thing to do, mainly because, well, we've been calling for him to be the starter for the rest of the year on this show. So I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. But, you know, if I had to take your pulse of it, how would you describe the first half of the season for the Jazz?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been successful. That's what I think. I think that the Jazz have done exactly what they needed to do and then some. You know, again, and I'm just going to keep saying this, let's not forget what the expectations were heading into the season. You know, when you have most of the fan base saying we're going to tank for VW and we're going to be awful and it's going to be a long year, and it turns out it's not so bad, is it? Because you're this team that's competing for a spot in the play-in, and you're not tanking for VW. And I think that on its own right there, before we even get into the trade stuff or any of the, you know, front office activities, just the fact that you're competing for a play-in spot, I think is huge. I think that, you know, firstly sends a message that the organization is committed to winning. I know they're not winning at a high level this year, but it's only year one, right? You've just come out of, you know, tearing the organization down with the Don and the Rudy trade. Like, there's been a lot of change, as you all know. So to me, it's like, I feel like they've had a pretty good season so far. Yes, there's been ups. Yes, there's been downs. But in the big picture, I would say the pulse of this team right now is they're having a good season for what they have to work with. And again, the trade deadline's really going to define what this second half is going to look like.
Well, and I also think on this Mike Conley story, I do think they're going to trade Mike Conley. I will again tell you, I think Dallas is the most aggressive suitor for Mike Conley. I've heard that repeatedly. And I think that he either winds up with the Mavericks. I'd be surprised if it was at this point the Lakers or the Clippers. But I think those are really the only three options for him if the Jazz want to maximize their return. I think Luka Doncic has made it very clear he believes that they need to add a guy that can take him off the ball occasionally. He needs somebody that can run an offense and hit a three. Because Luka's getting double and triple team right now because he's having a sensational season. And I think Mike Conley is a guy that is very much desired by Dallas. I think that the bigger issue in Los Angeles is this thing with the Clippers. Like, they're a pretty good team when they're all together. They just don't have a floor general at the point guard spot. And I think that is clearly their weakness. I'd put them at number 2. I don't think that, you know, there's a lot of people who point to Fred VanVleet as a guy that's a good fit in LA. I don't personally believe that. And it was pointed out to me the other day by an NBA source who was telling me, hey, the Clippers are not in a spot to extend Fred VanVleet. And I think I would agree with that. Salary cap wise, I think the Clippers are in a very interesting place. And I'll be curious to see how long can you keep this team together at this caliber of player, because their depth is no longer good enough. They need to add somebody they can count on. Now, obviously, that's an issue with Mike Conley, and I think the Clippers are well aware of the fact that he's a guy that's injured a lot. But the Jazz have done a really good job managing his minutes, keeping him healthy, keeping him fresh, and I think Mike's playing some really good basketball right now,
Facts.
Which is why there's a lot of value in his game right now. I think Dallas, again, is the most aggressive team from what I've been told on Mike Conley, but I would not be surprised to see him I would not be surprised to see Mike move. I'd be more surprised at this point if the Utah Jazz do not trade Mike Conley than if he were to be here after the deadline. I'd be really surprised by that because we only have now, 11 days until the NBA trade deadline. It's a week from Thursday.
Yeah.
And I'd really expect business to pick up next weekend. I mean, like this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'd really expect some business to start getting done in this league because you're just out of time now. And as we talked about last week on the show, I think there are not a lot of sellers at this deadline. I think there is an exceptional amount of buyers, a lot of teams that believe they're at the level or above, and they want to add a guy like a Mike Conley. Dallas knows Luka Doncic is doing this on his own. I think the bigger issue in Dallas is what do they have to offer you 1v1? And I don't know that there's a deal 1v1 to be done with Dallas and the Utah Jazz. I know factually, though, that the Knicks, the Jazz, and the Mavericks could make a deal happen. I mean, Reggie Bullock's a guy that I think is very much in demand around the league as well. And that's why Dallas becomes this very interesting team at the NBA trade deadline, because I don't believe they're sellers, but I also don't believe necessarily that they're buyers. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch Dallas operate here because I don't think, and I think they don't believe that they're championship contenders today. The question is, do they want to spend the bread to become one? And if they do, I think you're going to see them make a significant deal. And one of the guys that's been talked about there is Julius Randle because he's playing at an exceptionally high level. The question is, do the Knicks have an appetite to change their roster now? Mm-hmm. Because they're having a good, not great season, right? They're a playoff team. I think this James Dolan stuff from last week is
facial recognition
is a very awkward thing for the New York Knicks right now. Do they want to push for a championship now? A lot of NBA people believe that Leon Rose is trying to get his financial house in order for this summer, which makes a lot of sense because you're not going to make a transformative deal now. Is Julius Randle that guy? I don't know. I think he's playing the best power forward in the NBA right now. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion.
I thought the best point you made there is about the reality of life in the market right now, that there are a ton of buyers and not a ton of sellers. So, like, you look at someone like Leon Rose, or you look at the fellas in Dallas, like you look at some of these teams and you're like, all right, yeah, you're this team that's pretty good, pretty solid team, winning basketball team so far this year. But the problem is you've never really been, full send team at the deadline, meaning, all right, we need to create, like in Dallas, we got to create a championship starting five around Luka. How are we going to go about doing that, and what does that look like? I like Mike Conley's fit in Dallas. I think that Mike Conley playing with Luka and several of those other guys, that's a nice fit. Mike Conley is exactly what they're describing as their need, which is somebody who can run an offense, get Luka off the ball, and hit the three. That's like, I've never heard of a better description of Mike Conley than that. So to me, it's like you have this dynamic at play where you have all these teams that want to buy and they want to, change their roster and they want to do some things. There's only a few teams really selling. So what that says to me is Danny, once again, is in a power position, right? Just like we had said, hey, he set the market with the Rudy trade and the Don trade. He's in control, right? Even with the Royce trade, getting a first rounder out of the Royce trade, you've set the market. And so now we're hearing that, hey, there's way more demand than supply, which then means that supply is going to go up in value. So that's why I say the original question to start this conversation, what do we think of the first half? I don't know. Ask me after the deadline's over, because I think that largely defines whether you've been successful or not. But I think so far you've done a really nice job this year. I just hope that the trade deadline isn't one of these things where it was like, well, there's a lot of demand out there, but we couldn't quite get something done.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I just don't know who's going to be the first domino to fall. And the Knicks feel like a team that's on that line. And I think the Mitchell Robinson injury is kind of interesting. He should be back here coming up in a couple of weeks. I look at the fact that Julius Randle just started this contract, and it's a nice one. RJ Barrett's set to make $107 million on this extension he just signed. Like, what do you do with this Knicks roster? Because I think they're really interesting. What are the Chicago Bulls going to do with their roster? Because, listen, you can sit here and you can talk about, hey, the Bulls want to make trades. I don't think they have an appetite to trade Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan. I really don't. And the frustrating thing is that they are willing to trade Ayo Dosunmu now, who's a very nice young point guard, which is a bit frustrating as a Bulls fan for me growing up in Chicago. He's from Chicago. He played in Chicago. Like, he's a guy that you want on that roster, but they're more willing to build around vets than they are around young guys. And if you're a Bulls fan, the thing that should be driving you crazy right now is they're willing to trade Ayo Dosunmu and Patrick Williams, who they were not willing to trade less than a year ago, last summer. And their disappointment in Pat Williams is that he has not developed at the rate that they thought he would. So now you have Pat Williams and Ayo Dosunmu available, but as we told you last week, they're asking a king's ransom for Alex Caruso.
Yeah.
So essentially, Alex Caruso's not on the market. Nobody's given 2 first-round picks for Alex Caruso. Nobody. And again, I'll just go back to the Jazz on this because NBA sources told me over the weekend the Jazz have been offered a first-round pick for Jordan Clarkson. And they have not taken that offer. They have a deal in place to trade Jordan Clarkson, and they have not accepted it.
Yeah.
And it's a first-round pick. And I think that's just craziness because they want 2 first-round picks for Jordan Clarkson. Is Jordan Clarkson a guy that's worth 2 first-round picks? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know an NBA executive that's willing to give up 2 first-round picks for JC.
Well, and this is that conversation about supply and demand. I think Danny
is
trying to squeeze the absolute last drop out of every single opportunity that he can. And you know, earlier, 5 minutes ago, you just pointed out that, hey, we're, 10 days away or whatever it is, 11 days from the deadline. And so to me, that says, hey, there's still plenty of time here, that we're still far enough away where that, like, I don't know if desperation's too strong of a word, but certainly urgency and like, hey, we got to get a deal done. The deadline's here. Like, we need to work with Danny on something. That feeling hasn't set in yet, in my opinion. And if it has, it certainly hasn't set into a length with, which, a team would be willing to overpay for Jordan Clarkson. Because I don't think Jordan's worth 2 first-round picks. And I don't think Danny thinks he's worth 2 first-round picks. But I think Danny is doing what Danny does, which is, hey, this guy's probably worth, $1. Well, we're 10 days out from the deadline. Let's ask $2 for him. And then when we get like a couple days from the deadline, we'll vet some deals. We'll look at what's available and who we've talked to, and then we'll bring that price down and figure out where we want to move him. That, to me, is how Danny Ainge operates, in my opinion. That's how he goes about it and how he does business. So to me, it's like, whether I'm looking at JC or I'm looking at Mike or guys like, Threesley, Beastly, whatever you want to call Buddy, these are all guys that are available. And the Jazz are one of the few sellers on the market right now that actually have really valuable contributing pieces that championship caliber teams or even teams like Dallas, who are just mid-tier contenders, would be really interested in. And that's why I'm saying this first half has been nice. You've done more winning than people thought you would. You started 13-4 or whatever that was. You all remember it when everyone was saying this was a 55-60 win team, which is total crap, right? We know what this team is. They're a sub to near 500 team, which is going to get them into the play-in, and then they'll get eliminated, which I think is highly successful for this first round. But if you screw up the deadline, if you don't execute a high level at the deadline, it's all for naught.
And I think, again, my bigger question is, what is Jordan Clarkson's value? I think it's a 1 and a 2. I would give up a 1 this year and a 2 in the future to get Jordan Clarkson if I am a contender, if I am the Clippers, if I am, the Dallas Mavericks, if I am the Brooklyn Nets. Like, there's a lot of value in that. If you're a team on the cusp, like, one of the things that I think is so interesting is, what are the Milwaukee Bucks doing? Like, Grayson Allen has value on the market. If you're the Milwaukee Bucks, what are you trying to add to get him? Well, they're trying to get Jay Crowder. Like, where does Jay Crowder end up? Like, you have all of these interesting scenarios, and Phoenix has all of their first-round picks. They own all of their draft capital. What is Phoenix going to do? Like, how is that ownership situation going to impact them? That deal's supposed to close this week, right? Robert Sarver still has to sign off on all these deals. I just think there's so many teams that need to be buying and so few teams need to be selling. That's why the Knicks are so fascinating to me, because the New York Knicks are a club that have a lot of assets teams would like.
Yeah.
And the question is, Are you a seller or are you a buyer? Because the Knicks right now, I don't know. I don't think anybody in this room believes that the New York Knicks are a championship caliber basketball team right now.
No, and I think, whether we're looking at the Knicks on the floor or we're looking at them as an organization, you can't say they're a championship caliber team. And I think the real struggle is I don't think they know if they want to be a buyer or a seller. I think what they do know is that they're more concerned about the P&L statement and making sure people don't get into their building that they don't want in there than winning basketball games. And I'm not even trying to be snarky. I genuinely believe that.
Well, look at Pascal Siakam in Toronto.
Another great example.
Does he end up in Phoenix? There's a lot of people who thinks Pascal Siakam is going to be a Phoenix Sun.
Look at all the rumors around OG Anunoby and 3 first-round picks and like all this gas about him. Like Toronto again is one of those teams that should be a seller, right? We're dropping names like Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry, and like this nonsense to me about the Clippers trying to go and get Kyle Lowry because Kawhi won a ring with Kyle Lowry back in the day is absolutely asinine to me. I don't know why you would add a guy in Kyle Lowry who's this deep into his career. I understand the championship pedigree and the experience, but Kyle Lowry is not the guy that you're going to add to a starting 5 and think that that's going to push you across the line. That doesn't make sense to me.
I still maintain that the best fit for Jay Crowder is the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
And I think Atlanta's really going to miss out on that deal because I just go back to what we reported 6-7 weeks ago now, that the Jazz, the Suns, and the Hawks had a deal. And the Phoenix Suns didn't want to give up a first-round pick to get it done. It's that simple. And if you are the Atlanta Hawks, that trade is going to haunt you because you would have been able to offload John Collins' contract. You'd have gotten a savvy veteran leader in Jay Crowder, who's now I still maintain he ends up with Milwaukee. If I had to guess, I think Jay Crowder goes to Milwaukee.
I agree with you. I think that's a great fit. I think like the way he plays the game, the fact that it's a smaller market per se, like it fits really nicely with what he brings.
Yeah, and I think the Jazz, at the end of all this, the Jazz are in a really good spot. They have clarity on who they are and where they are. And in my opinion, that is 90% of the battle in the NBA is clubs not understanding who they are and where they are.
Yeah.
Again, I asked the same question about the Phoenix Suns. Do they understand who they are and where they are? And what are you going to get from Milwaukee? Because a Jay Crowder trade to Milwaukee can be one of two things. Let's get this Jay Crowder deal done so we can move on and make a bigger trade to make ourselves championship ready. Or that's the deal you're going to make, and we're going to roll with – because who knows what you're going to get out of that deal, right? Who knows what you're going to get? But if you wind up trading Jay Crowder and you get a Grayson Allen in return, does that make you a better basketball team? Well, I think it does.
Yeah, and I think the Suns, and this is really the shame in the Jay Crowder situation. The Suns need toughness. They're not a tough team, right? Like the Suns are soft. We've seen that repeatedly, and it's unfortunate that a guy in Jay Crowder who had one of what I would call one of his best career moments in a Suns uniform in that lob to Ayton to dunk it with like 0.2 seconds left. Like that's one of the greatest moments in dude's career. And it's really unfortunate that it had to end this way. And I think that like if I'm the Suns, like, I am trying to get a Grayson Allen back. And I'm no Grayson Allen guy. I think the guy's a dirty player. Like what he did to Alex Caruso, obviously all the tripping stuff at Duke. Like we know who this guy is. It's no secret. That said, whether you like that or not, it's really irrelevant because he brings a certain toughness to a team. And I think they need that with all due respect to guys like Cam Johnson, Cam Payne. Like these guys they're bringing off the bench just aren't tough. They're good players, but they don't have that edge.
And I'm telling you, if Atlanta trades John Collins to somewhere other than the Jazz are missing an opportunity there. Because I think he is exactly the solution they need at power forward.
Facts.
I mean, and we just talked about it to open the show. Like when you're talking about Kelly Olynyk and you're talking about, hey, where does Kelly Olynyk fit and what happens? And, like I look at John Collins. John Collins is a guy you can put at the power forward for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
You can develop him into a better defensive player. He's already a serviceable three-point shooter. He's already a good rebounder. He needs to learn to defend in this league. And I think if you're the Utah Jazz, that's a deal you need to make. You absolutely need to make that deal, 100%. All right, let's get some of your comments in here. I see a lot of you in on these trade situations. Mesh says, what would you give up for OG if you were the Jazz? I'm not an OG Anunoby guy, and I don't think the Jazz are either. He is not. The problem is if you bring in a guy like OG and you start looking at his numbers, what does that deal do to your long-term fit?
Yeah.
That's what I'd be looking at. And if you're the Jazz right now, you have some really flexible salaries. I mean, Lauri Markkanen is on a deal that is a steal. Like, he is a guy that, I mean, if he continues this trajectory and you put a star around him, that's a guy that that's a guy that can carry you for long stretches. Now, I know this is crazy. You actually have to give Lauri Markkanen the basketball. I know. It's crazy. It's crazy
Don't say
talk.
Outlandish things. Come on.
It's crazy talk. The nice thing is that OG Anunoby is not making a ton of money. He's only owed something like $56 million. His whole deal was 4 years and $72 million. You have him next year at 18.6, and then he's on a player option.
Yeah.
Is he going to sign an extension outside of that? I need to know that. Right? And he has got a really, really good contract. The issue becomes that he's on a player option. Am I giving up 2 first-round picks to get OG Anunoby on a player option?
No.
Probably not. And again, I don't hate OG Anunoby's game. I really don't. But he's somebody that is a 15 to 17 points a night guy. So he's not going to carry your team offensively. He's not a tremendous rebounder, right? I mean, you look at him as a three-point shooter. He's a 36% three-point shooter. I don't know that he does anything well enough to justify 3 first-round picks.
I started having second thoughts.
I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I certainly don't value him at that level.
But again, I think this whole conversation around supply and demand is interesting and how it affects, guys like OG Anunoby.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I would never give up 3 first-rounders to get OG Anunoby. That seems like, super excessive. But,
yeah.
Again, if there's a lot of competition, maybe they end up getting that.
Yep, I agree. Tyler P. says Clarkson hasn't played great of late, and he seems to hero ball a lot. That's all he's ever been, though.
Yeah.
When has he not been a hero ball guy? Brett Burnett says Clarkson owns many houses, so selling them is nothing new. Who cares? This is, again, I just ask you, does a guy selling a house mean anything? Oh, but he bought that house in San Antonio. Who cares? So he's going to the Spurs, right? No, he's not going to What are you talking about? Del Hargis says, Mike doesn't fit long-term timeline for the Jazz. Mike with Dallas would be a great fit, but I'd hate to watch him help Donkey Jokic better. Yeah, I'm sorry. You said Donkey Jokic.
Okay.
Luka, that's Luka Doncic in Latin. Luka Doncic in Latin is pronounced Donkey Jokic.
My name is Luka.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Tyler P. says, I'm convinced Clarkson isn't a winning player. Watch how loud you say that. You say that out loud, and the Philippine military is going to come for your ass, dude. He's not a championship player.
Yeah.
He's a piece on a championship player, on a championship team. He is not. He is Jordan Clarkson. Why is it so wrong to talk truth about what Jordan Clarkson is as a player? He's beloved here. Okay, cool. But that doesn't mean we're not going to tell the truth. He's a guy who doesn't pass the ball. He's a guy who turns the ball over. He's a guy that would rather dribble into a double team and throw a ball up blindly than make the right pass to get a guy an open look to win the game.
Yeah.
That's who he is. That's who he's always been. He won the 6th man of the year because of flame on, bro.
Flame on.
That's what he is as a player. Why is that so tragic to say that?
And that's how I look at it.
I don't get that. Robert Lambert says, what about Randall on the Jazz? Yeah, he's not what the Jazz value.
Yeah.
He has been. They had a chance at him, and they summarily turned that down on that Knicks deal. Dell also says Mike doesn't fit. No, I got that one already. My bad. Robert Lambert says dude is 24-10 this season. We don't have a power forward. Statistics don't tell the story. Julius is also a guy that's volatile. He's a guy that you don't know what you're getting every single day emotionally. So, I mean, he's a phenomenal player. I think he's been the best power forward in the league this year, statistically. I don't think he's a guy that you want to pay the money he's making, especially now where the Jazz are. The Jazz aren't going to compete for a championship in the next year,
right?
2 years. So I think I would not be out chasing a superstar today. Mm-hmm. That's this summer. I'd be chasing a superstar this summer. Let's see. Forrest G says, good morning. How the heck are you? Brandon Butler says, Danny can smell teams' fear. It's his bacon bits.
They don't want to get aged.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody said that to me last week. They don't want to get aged. Lopes fan Gabe says, Danny executes at a high level, but his greed also landed duds like Bogdanovich. The Bogdanovich deal. That deal still sticks in my craw.
Yeah.
Because they're going to get a first-round pick for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the trouble is, in that, I guess this would be one of my only concerns with Danny, is the pride factor. I do think sometimes Danny is like, hey, you're doing this deal, we're not doing a deal. And to me, that hasn't led him astray yet, right? There hasn't really, like the Bogdanovich thing, I view as an outlier because you've done so well on Gobert, Donnie, Royce, like you've done so well on some of these other deals. But if the deadline is a dud, if there's like one deal that gets done, but not really transformative, not really special, not really anything that's like, wow, he really changed this team, then I think you got to start asking some questions, because there's no excuse not to have, Mike Conley gone, not to have JC gone. And I know Ryan doesn't want to trade JC, and I respect that. But the reality is JC's not re-signing on, or not, picking up his option. And I know in the comments section on the channel over the weekend, I'm seeing people saying, well, JC knows how the business works, and he knows the Jazz can't pay him till next summer, so he's going to do the team a favor and take that option. It's like, no, he's not. He's not doing that. So when I look at Danny, all I'm saying is that at this deadline, we should see, Beasley, Conley, JC, these guys should get moved because there is demand and desire. And once that's gone, it's hard to move guys for proper value.
Oh, I would agree with that totally. Make sure you go ahead and hit the like button on the show as we talk Utah Jazz basketball, presented by Quack Car Wash. All of our Utah Jazz and NBA talk presented by Quack. They're just a great car wash. They're great people to do business with. And I tell you again, I was there on Saturday, and the car just comes out looking good. Like every time it snows, I get my car washed. Every time the road's wet, I get my car washed. And yeah, it's dirty today because it snowed yesterday, so I'm going to Quack today. That's why I have a wash pass, because I don't let my Audi, I have an SQ5 and I love that thing. I don't let my Audi sit with a bunch of salt and dirt on it. Not when I have a wash pass at Quack. It makes it really easy to keep my car in good shape all winter long. And the best part is they're really friendly, and I'm in and out of there in 5-7 minutes. Like, I don't have a lot of time. I'm a busy guy. I got stuff to do.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of time to sit in a line for 20 minutes. And you know how I found Quack? Because the line moved really fast when I gave him a shot. I was there literally at the district. It wraps around the building sometimes because I think the word's out. Quack is no longer like the best kept secret in car washes. They're busy all the time because of their free vacuums and towels. But you still get in and out of there in like 5-7 minutes. And I love it. The wash is great. Get to Quack Car Wash. Tell them you heard about it on the Monty Show. I think the other part of Gabe's comment, let's see, right here. The other part of this comment, I think, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. At some point, all these picks need to become something tangible. Assets don't lift trophies, players do.
Yeah.
But isn't this why the Phoenix Suns, and I've told you this, again, I don't mean to be redundant, the Suns want a forward that can contribute. And I think that's why, like on this Jay Crowder thing, I'm telling you right now, the Jazz should be the third team in that deal. Because if you're the Phoenix Suns, what are you going to take from Milwaukee? Serge Ibaka? Because that's what you're going to have to do to make that trade work, right? But if you're the Phoenix Suns and you need a forward who can give you 20 minutes a night Is that not Jared Vanderbilt? Is that not Kelly Olynyk? Are you telling me that Threesley, Beastly doesn't fit into this equation somewhere? Of course he does. Are you telling me that a bigger deal that adds somebody of note in the forward spot? And this is the problem with Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson. They're not big guys. So you run into a team like Milwaukee and you get pushed around. You run into an Eastern Conference Boston Celtics team in the final, you're going to get pushed around. You've got to find somebody who on that Phoenix roster right now matches up with Claxton in Brooklyn. Who on that Phoenix roster right now? Because it ain't DeAndre Ayton, I can tell you that. That's the biggest question for me. Who's going to play the 3-4 with any kind of physical nature if you're the Phoenix Suns? Who's going to spell DeAndre Ayton? Because it ain't Bismack Biyombo.
Yeah.
Right? And if you are trading a guy in Jay Crowder, isn't Jay Crowder the exact thing the Phoenix Suns are missing right now? If you're the Jazz, how do you not get involved in that deal? That's why when you have all these assets and you have a Vanderbilt and you have an Olynyk and you have a guy like a Beasley, like a Clarkson, those guys fit in all of these situations with contenders.
Yeah.
So how do you not make that deal? I can tell you right now, Conley's not the only one that Dallas would love to have. They'd love to have Malik Beasley. They would love to flip Tim Hardaway Jr. and turn him into Malik Beasley.
I'd like that too.
They'd love that. Well, yeah.
Right.
But you have to Gabe's point, you have to take these assets and turn them into something. It's great that you're collecting draft picks. Like an NBA guy I talked to on the regular called what the Jazz have nothing better than goldfish in a pond. Every time you acquire a first-round pick, just throw it into the pond with the other goldfish. But guess what? Those are eventually going to die if you don't flip them into something.
Yep.
Right? And if you don't take those goldfish and you don't feed them and you don't grow them and they don't turn into something spectacular, what good was it?
Yeah.
And it's no good. Because all you're going to do is feed those goldfish to the Sharks eventually.
And you're going to watch Donovan Mitchell dominate in Cleveland.
Well, because that's another team that is on Jordan Clarkson's radar. Cleveland, I think Cleveland would love to get Jordan Clarkson back.
Yes.
I think that's a team that needs a Grayson Allen. The Knicks are a team that needs a Grayson Allen. Isn't that crazy that he's got value around the league
Well,
now?
because what does he do? Right? And this is the point we always try to make with like all the guys who hate on Caruso type players or whatever. Like Grayson Allen is not some all-star. He's not some amazing player. Like he's not. But what does he do? He does the things you don't want to do. He goes in, dives for that ball. He goes in and gets real physical with someone. He goes in and drops Caruso when Caruso's got a breakaway and he's not feeling, he's not feeling that. He's not appreciating that. So that's why I say, like, Grayson Allen's a guy you would love to have on your team, and you hate playing him if he's on the other team.
Yep.
And that's just how it works.
Yep, totally agree. Hey, make sure you check out our membership on the program. I just put a link in the comments. Join the show because every day on this show you get the best Utah Jazz talk. You get the best NFL. You get the best college football. I cannot wait for baseball season because we're going to talk a ton of baseball this summer, man. I am so fired up about it. Make sure you join the membership. We are pushing 80 members now on the show.
Let's go.
And we've only been offering memberships for 3 weeks. It'll be 3 weeks this Thursday that we've offered memberships. And I'm telling you, dude, it's crazy how much the community's grown. And yeah, you get exclusive videos, the merch drop that's coming this week. We have the store set up. We have all that stuff done. We're just waiting to get approval from our vendor to sell things, Amazon. We're going to use Amazon fulfillment. You're going to get first access to that. Like, you get a lot of perks. The number one reason that you join the Monty Show for $9.99 a month is to get access to the chat on Instagram. You have a members-only chat group on Instagram, and it's not just sports. Now, during the football games, the chat was unbelievable. Jazz games, the chat's unbelievable. The cool thing is, though, the offline stuff, supporting each other, talking about cold plunges or talking about recipes or talking about, like, I cannot tell you how many guys in that group have reached out to me and said, hey, I really appreciate that this guy helped me with that guy, or like Teddy Wayman on tile, or we have a bunch of really talented people in that group that make that group special now. And it's not just sports talk. The fact that Jeremy Bolton was at the Grizzlies game the other night.
Yeah.
And we went and hung out with him in the Maverick suite.
I have a proclamation from the desk of the mayor.
Yeah, that you guys are reaching out to us and being like, hey, I'm at the Grizzlies game, or hey, I'm at the Jazz game. Who else is here? Or like, that a couple of our members met up at the Jazz game the other night.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Well, we went to, we've gone to restaurants, we've gone to different places.
Yeah.
And people have come and had lunch with us. Like, that's what it's about. Like, I know that, you've got 1,000,001 Netflix-style subscriptions that you're probably subscribed to, if you will. But the reason that I feel like our membership is more valuable than that is because it's personal interaction. I mean, we're literally in this group chat talking about everything under the sun, and that's the beauty of it. Like, on the show, we can only get to so many comments, right? Like, we get people all the time, oh, well, you didn't read my comment. Well, that's because we get like 4,000 comments a show. But if you're a member and you have that access, you can ask us anything you want. Like, we had a guy yesterday, I can't remember who it was, say, hey, do you have promo code for tickets to go see Monster Trucks? Because Monster Trucks are coming. Like, that's what I mean. You get access to that stuff. That's why it's worth it.
Absolutely right. Make sure you click the link I put into the comments or click the join button on your mobile app. Just really appreciate the way you guys have supported the show. I thought the thing the other day with, appreciating your wives and doing little chores around the house and how can we, what are the little things we do? Like, that kind of stuff is amazing. James Knight, who's a member of the show, says the Cavs need to get past the Bucks, Giannis, and Middleton, Holiday. Well, I think that that's going to be very difficult to do because I still maintain that Drew Holiday is playing at a very high level. That's a dude whose hands I want the ball on. Put the ball in his hands in clutch, and he's coming through.
Yeah.
Giannis put up a 50 spot yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean,
rather easily too, I might add.
Man, Brett Stubbs, good morning to you. He says, I need to join. Yes, you do.
Yes, let's go, Brett.
Worth it.
Let's go, dude.
Worth its weight in gold, that's for sure. Brandon Butler says 60 days till baseball.
Yes.
Let's go. Tyler P. Lopes, Jazz are 2 to 3 years from competing. Winning trades now is important. Well, but it depends on what timeline you want to operate on. As the roster is constructed today, you're not going to win anything. You make a transformative deal in the summer now, because remember where they are. This is a 500 basketball team that is on the precipice of making a playoffs.
I mean, you figure in the league, there's probably, I don't know, off the top of my head, 20, 25 players that are worth 10 wins a year to a team on their own. So, I mean, you have guys that you can try and go and get. I think what's important, though, through this process is not to lose the identity of this team because with all due respect to Will Hardy, he's still earning his stripes too. And I think that we have seen some moments out of Will Hardy where it's like, okay, clearly this is a younger head coach. The Clarkson versus Philly thing, what was that, 2 weeks ago or whatever? Like, you've had some moments where you're like, why'd you draw this play that way? Or how are you handling Colin Sexton on the bench? Like, some things that Will Hardy's grown with too. So I think through this deadline, if you can create a team that is a winning team, I think then our spotlight kind of shifts to Will Hardy and just how far he can take a team like that with his ability.